Mm-hmm.
But this specific day was Carolina's open practice at the FedEx Forum there in Memphis, ahead of the Sweet 16 game against Butler. And it was spring break for our family, and so we were actually headed to see some friends in Alabama. And to get there, we have to pass through Memphis. So it was like a no-brainer. Hey, let's stop. Let's go to open practice. So we spent the night in Memphis and got ready to go to the practice the next day. So that morning, Thursday morning, we went to the famous Peabody Hotel where they have the ducks that walk through. And so we were actually just going to see the ducks. And as we got to the lobby, Coach Steve Robinson came down the elevator, and we're like, holy cow, we're about to see the team. And so everybody comes flooding out, and spent a couple moments with Justin Jackson and Tony Bradley and Kennedy Meeks, and that was really cool. But then came the man, Coach Williams, and he was really kind, spent a few moments with my oldest son, Paxton, who was 1 at the time, and just a neat moment. We thought, hey, what a cool thing that was. But later in the day, we did go to the open practice. I don't know if you remember, but that pod, as I said, included Carolina and Butler, but also UCLA. That was the team with Lonzo Ball.
Yep.
And Kentucky was there. It was the De'Aaron Fox and Bam Adebayo team. And so we got to see all those guys. It was awesome. But at the practice, at Carolina's part, we were able to just get down on the front row, and Coach spent some more time making faces at my son in the middle of the practice. Who does that, ridiculous. But after the practice was over, we're walking out, and I needed to use the bathroom, so I stepped into the bathroom. And when I came out, my wife said that Coach and Miss Wanda Williams had come through the concourse, and he stopped and talked to him again. He said, hey, there's my buddy. And they just spent a couple more moments. And, of course, I missed that moment because I was in the bathroom. So that's strike one in this whole story against me. And even beyond that, later, I had taken a picture of Coach and Pax during the practice, and so sent it to Coach and asked him to sign it for my son's second birthday, and he did, and sent it back. Just these are the things that he takes the time to do because of who he is, and truthfully because of the foundation that Coach Smith set for him.
Right.
And so what a neat moment. But then, of course, strike two for me. A couple days later, we're headed back through Memphis. It's Sunday, the day of Carolina's Elite Eight game against Kentucky. Yes, that Elite game, Elite Eight game against Kentucky. And we were going back to Memphis. It was about 40 minutes before tip-off. And my wife said, hey, why don't we see if there's tickets on StubHub or something? And so she looked, and there were. And she said, you want to go? And I said, no, already. It's going to be about midnight before we get home. Let's just listen to the game while we drive. It'll be fun. And, of course, Luke May did what Luke May did. So I'm this goober who had the opportunity to see the Luke May shot in person and turned it down. So that's strike two against me in this story. But all that to say, this story for me just encapsulates the person that Roy Williams is. He's been an incredible coach, literally one of the best ever to do it. But despite that, again, he is an even better man. At that point in my life, he didn't know me and obviously didn't know my family. But he took the time to invest a couple moments of his life and his precious time in my toddler. And so that human element, that humanity in him, I would say is incredibly commendable. And so my family and I were forever moved by his graciousness that day.
I got tears in my eyes listening to you. You talk so passionately about not just the coach that Roy Williams is, but the man, because I think that's always been more important to him, just as it been winning basketball games. As tough as yesterday was, Carolina has to move on and find their new next basketball coach. And Bubba Cunningham started that process last night when he met with the media. And I thought it was a smart move by him to hold two separate conferences last night, one to announce the retirement of Roy Williams, and then later that night to talk about where the program goes next. You were a part of Bubba Cunningham's Zoom call. Did anything stand out to you specifically from what Bubba said last night?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I'll list about three of them. I think the first thing, more on a general level, was just his candor about everything. There were several national college basketball personalities on there, and one of them, Jeff Goodman, whom a lot of people know, even said, "Bub, I just want to thank you for your candor and the open way in which you're talking about this." And obviously, Jeff Goodman is somebody who's part of tons of these kind of coaching searches, and so for him to recognize that and point that out, I think says a lot, not just about Bubba, but about how the University of North Carolina handles their business. Number two, he was also more open than I imagined to the possibility of someone outside the Carolina family.
Yes.
I don't think that necessarily means, and I know we'll talk about this more a little bit, necessarily means he will go outside the family with the choice, but that he's more open than I thought he would be to at least considering that as a possibility. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. It's just interesting to me about that. And obviously part of that is he's not a Carolina grad, so he probably sees a little bit of a bigger world. The third thing I noticed is that he definitely understands the gravity of the moment. He knows that no pressure, no weight on your shoulders. This is literally the biggest decision you're going to make in your career to this point, and potentially ever. And so he clearly understands the gravity of that, but that doesn't mean it takes any of the pressure away. And so just a couple other things about it were, I think everyone knows, but perhaps not. He has been part of the selection committee for the NCAA tournament. And so he's been past several weeks and months part of that process, and then holed up in the bubble in Indianapolis and had to step away from that, as he told me last night on the Zoom call. And so the man has to be exhausted. But despite that, he seemed to be clear-eyed, alert. He knows what's going on here. And let's think about it. He brought Mac Brown back to Carolina. He successfully navigated Carolina through the NCAA mess. And now he's going to choose Roy Williams' successor. And consider that amongst all the other accolades he has as Carolina AD. This is an opportunity for him to go down as the best athletic director in Carolina history. And at this point, I feel like I trust him to do that. However, on the flip side, this is, as we said, the biggest decision of his career. Get it wrong, that's going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard.
You know, I listened to the media session last night, and I concluded that there's probably a much greater chance they hire a non-Carolina guy than in my whole timeline thinking about when we got to this point. Of course, this process has all been sped up by 3 to 5 years than what we probably all thought. And I think the thing is that the way Carolina's done it, with keeping it within the family, has proven to work outside of the Matt Doherty situation. And Matt Doherty has owned the things that failed him and ultimately failed the program. But I've always said, you don't have Roy Williams without Matt Doherty, so we got to appreciate what Matt Doherty did. Even though it wasn't a lot of good things, you still don't have Roy Williams without him coming here. If Carolina does go outside the family, what's the most important attribute, characteristic that guy has to have if it's going to work here? Because I think we can both agree this isn't just an ordinary job. This is one of the best basketball jobs, not just in college. This is one of the best basketball jobs in the world. So there comes a lot of pressure with coaching basketball in Chapel Hill.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with you. In fact, I heard several national media people yesterday defend that Carolina was the number one college basketball job.
Yes.
Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish were saying on the CBS on a college basketball podcast that he said, Matt Norlander said, he said Duke and Kentucky have a seat at the table and they have an argument, but Carolina, given conference and everything they have, is the best job in the country. And so, it's not just us insiders recognizing that; it's national people. And so, you said, what is the most important quality for someone coming in from the outside, if that's the direction they choose to go? And I think it's exactly a couple things that Coach Williams spoke about yesterday. It goes without saying they're going to be a great basketball coach, because if they go outside the family, it's not going to be for just Joe Schmo, right? If they go outside the family, you're talking names like Mark Few and Jay Wright and Scott Drew and all these other guys, right? So it goes without saying they're going to be a great basketball coach. But what would they be looking for beyond that is the things that Roy Williams inhabited. A person of integrity, a person that is going to be above board in the things they do in recruiting. And I know some of that's going to change with name, image, and likeness, so there's less opportunity to screw some of that up. But somebody who cares about his players and the people around him, support staff, assistant coaches, all that kind of thing. And somebody that's going to represent the University of North Carolina with character and integrity. They cannot afford, I know Roy Williams wasn't part of this, but cannot afford another scandal less than a decade after what they've just been through.
Right.
And so if it does go outside the family, no brainer that it's somebody with an incredible track record on court, but somebody that's got it off court too.
I'm going to preface my next question by saying that I've had Matt Doherty on my podcast. I respect him as a man. But as I alluded to, he had some issues that led to his downfall when he took over the program in 2000. How important is it for Carolina to avoid another Matt Doherty situation?
It's a great question. Let me first, as you kind of alluded to earlier, he did have some good things. Let's remember, without Matt Doherty, we don't have Sean May, we don't have Raymond Felton, and we don't have number 32, who shall remain nameless.
And we don't have someone calling Duke Uglies cheerleaders uglies or something like that.
Yes, exactly. So let's acknowledge him, thank him for what he did contribute, and what a great guy. And as you said, has very honorably handled things in recent years, and so thankful for him. Now, to your question, it's very important to avoid that situation again. Here's what I do want to acknowledge, though. A lot of that was the timing of what happened with Coach Smith.
Yes.
Dean Smith retired October 9th, 1997. That's the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Who knows how things would have played out if he had retired in the spring, as Coach Williams just did, and given the university more time to find a long-term replacement. The short-term solution was obviously Bill Guthridge. And maybe even if Coach Smith had retired in the spring, it would have eventually handed things off to Coach Guthridge. That still might have happened. But I think Coach Smith knew what he was doing, because waiting that long, he knew things would get handed off to this man that had been by his side for years. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Coach Guthridge did great. Yeah. But that was obviously a short-term solution, and then they had to turn somewhere else. Obviously, the play was Roy Williams. It wasn't time to leave us. He said over and over again, I promised Kirk Heinrich that I would be there his entire career at Kansas. And that's Roy Williams. That's what he's going to do, and you respect that. But then that led on down the food chain, and you land with Matt Doherty, who was much further down. And I think the problem there is that Roy Williams at that point was the white whale, and everybody else was subpar to that. We don't have that person this time. There are some incredible candidates, and I think Carolina's going to land on their feet and get the right person for the job. But there is no-brainer, this is obvious, Roy Williams. And if we don't get that, just like Chris Beard going to Texas, it's his alma mater, he's going home. We don't have that level of no-brainer right now. And so I think we could go to Steve Robinson in a similar move to Coach Guthridge. He has the head coaching background. He's been by Coach Williams' side for all these years. But I don't see that type of thing happening. Right. So I think here's the thing. Coach Williams remembers all of that firmly, and he's not going to let it happen again. I think that's why he's making this decision now. And keep in mind, he said at his press conference, he has put a lot of weight on Bubba Cunningham's shoulders and on Chancellor Guskowitz's shoulders with his opinions about who it should be. And I don't think any of the options he would give them are in a situation that Roy Williams was in to say, no, it's not the time to come. I think anybody that they're going to look at from within the family would be ready to come right now. So I think it's very important to avoid a Matt Doherty situation. B, I don't think we'll be in a Matt Doherty situation.
Let's certainly hope not. Isaac, I was too young to experience this when Dean Smith retired in 97, and then when Bill Guthridge retired in 2000. Chapel Hill was the center of the sports world yesterday in a lot of ways with this news of Roy Williams' retirements. What are Tar Heel fans in store for as we await the decision of who will be the next head basketball coach for the Tar Heels?
It's nervous time when there is a void. you worry about how to fill it. I was a youngster when Coach Smith retired, but I grew up with him in the early informative years of my Tar Heel life. And then Coach Williams has been from my college years and beyond now into my adulthood. I'm an old man. I'm 37 years old. But waiting is a hard thing, especially when there's